Welcome to Das Geek. Oh, Mozilla. Mozilla. The creator of Firefox, one of the few options we have left in the industry not utilizing Google Chromium or powered by the Blink engine. If you're going to talk about the privacy-focused browsers, you may be thinking Brave, that's Chromium, Vivaldi, which I love, Chromium, Microsoft Edge, that's Chromium as well. Even though it's Microsoft, they went Chromium. You basically have Apple Safari, which isn't open source browser, but its engine is WebKit and you do have the GNOME web browser, formerly Epiphany, based on it, but not a lot of traction on browsers being based on the WebKit outside of that one example, at least that I know of. Then there's Firefox with Gecko. With Firefox, you have forks such as LibreWolf and WaterFox. And finally, we have the hope of the upcoming Ladybird. But it's in alpha development and will have its own engine, but we don't have it to test with yet. Rumors are we'll see an alpha version sometime in 2026. I'm excited for what Ladybird could be, but we'll have to see. We're going to have to wait and see. So if you take a look at all of this, the point of going through those was to basically say the browser wars from an engine standpoint at this moment are pretty much over. Chromium-based browsers win. It's like a no decision, complete knockout, TKO, it's over. And this gives Google an incredible amount of control. We've already seen Google wielding some of this control by AP access revocation, features that stopped working that were previously open source, like Chrome Sync, Chrome Translate, Chrome Spelling API. It also moved to Manifest version 3, which restricts web request APIs, which of course went after the ad blockers. And this gives Google control over which extensions will work and which won't. This is a major concern because now things like uBlock or even one of my favorites, Privacy Badger from EFF, you have to wonder if those things are going to continue to function properly as Google puts more and more restrictions in place on what used to be completely open source and people could utilize these functionalities and APIs to their specific needs. They also introduce a lot, this being Google, of proprietary APIs to gather more and more data on its users. So you can see that this is not good for privacy and security, and we really need companies like Mozilla more than ever. But they're not making it easy, and they seem to be potentially crossing over to the dark side, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now let's talk about Firefox, its own extension system, its own engine that's not reliant on Google, and a company that's been established for a long time. The reputation is basically they're the Robin Hood of browsers, which there's a new Robin Hood TV series on MGM that's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's pretty good. You might want to check it out. Anyways, a little bit off topic. The Robin Hood of browsers in a market dominated by Google. Can you tell I watched an episode today because I kind of did the whole Robin Hood thing. However, recent mishaps have obviously called into question whether Firefox is truly a friend or a foe at this point. Are they robbing from the rich and giving to the poor? Or are they like, you know what? It's just easier to go be friends with the rich. In order to not really beat Firefox down and pour more salt in an open wound of a company that I believe is clinging on for dear life, I'm not going to go into detail on all the mishaps that they've been involved in over the years that makes me question whose side they are on. But we can just, on a high level, you know, they had the Mr. Robot fiasco where they were installing things without user permission, removing hard lines that they had in the sand, such as we'll never sell your data and never will. We've never sold it, never will. Removing that from the frequently asked questions and putting in clauses such as you grant Mozilla a perpetual worldwide royalty-free license to use, modify, and distribute your user input. That was a clause that they tried to put in. Now, they apologized, adjusted, or changed some of these since the public outcry, but the changes weren't all to satisfaction, and these apologies keep stacking up to the point where most of us in the privacy sector are very suspicious of who Mozilla is anymore. But the story gets worse. You see, one of the ways I've wanted Firefox, and I talked about this a lot on Destination Linux for years because we've promoted Firefox from the very beginning of starting the podcast. It's the default browser on almost every distribution out there, although some have recently changed. They were pretty much guaranteed shoe-in up until recently. And we've wanted Firefox to monetize for a long time by selling services. Well, they finally started about a year or so ago, and it included things like Mozilla VPN, which was based on Molvad. Really good choice. Molvad, if you've watched my VPN video, is, in my opinion, the top privacy VPN there is. It's the best in existence that I know of, in my opinion. It's at least, if there are others as good as it, it is the bar at the top. Molvad is very, very trustworthy, very well-run VPN. However, despite many Linux users being the very community that supports Firefox, believe it or not, Mozilla's VPN based on Molvad did not initially run on Linux at all, despite the fact that Molvad does. So they based their service on Molvad. They didn't have as many features that if you just paid for the Molvad subscription you could get, and it didn't even run on Linux. It was so weird. It was confusing. It was bizarre even that the very community that was supporting Firefox so aggressively and so religiously almost that they would turn their backs on them. They give us then Relay in their subscription service as well. This let you mask email and phone numbers, which was a very cool feature. Mozilla then monitors for breaches, which we're going to come back to that part with Mozilla Monitor, as well to scan for leaks. And this is all part of a subscription service. Currently, you can get Relay plus VPN for $6.99 a month, or about $83 a year. And then they also have this MDN, which is a developer kind of code system, it looks like, for web development, but it's based on ChatGPT, which is their AI tool that you can sign up for. So those are the subscription services that they launched. Let's say that all of us were kind of disappointed. Mozilla wasn't creating services from scratch. They were kind of just reselling third-party stuff. In some scenarios, that makes complete sense, especially when you're dealing with the Molvad and the VPN. I mean, really good choice there, but you at least want to have the same features and the same systems to install it on launch that Molvad did. It's just like they rushed it out the door. And of course, when these services launched, despite that, I signed up for them immediately because I wanted to support Mozilla creating services to monetize themselves outside of just utilizing Google search as a default search engine, which is where they make the majority of their profits. And I had already, email monitoring and things like that through DuckDuckGo, which, after all, I trust far more than Mozilla. But now we're going to go back to really the key moment here that I want to get to, which is Mozilla Monitor for a moment. So Firefox Monitor Plus was the official term. They had a free and a paid tier, and its goal was promising the automated removal of user data from hundreds of people's search and data broker websites. The fact that these data broker websites can even exist shows you the issues we have with privacy, specifically in the United States. We have no privacy laws, and these companies go out, they get your personal address, they get your personal information, they claim to be able to get records on people, and they basically gather as much data as they can from purchasing from other companies, or getting information from other sites that they own that people input, and then selling that data. And then if you want it removed, well, you can technically write them, but most of the time they don't. And a lot of these type of companies, these data broker companies that post your information online, they actually have multiple sites under multiple URLs. So it's very difficult to get your information removed from them. And so there's these services out there that will do this. And so Mozilla partnered with a third-party company named OneRep. And the problem is that KrebsOnSecurity investigation back in March of 2024, and just remember that's last year, revealed that the CEO, Dmitry Shelist, was also the owner and creator of the very data broker networks it was supposed to be protecting you from. Shelst maintained ownership of Nuber, which is an active data broker that sells background reports. This means Mozilla was effectively paying a company whose founder created and profited from the very data selling industry one rep was supposed to be fighting. Why we in the United States do not have protections against these data brokers, and that the reason why this is so dangerous is for people who have stalkers and they're trying to get away from those stalkers. You've got data brokers out there posting people's addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, court records, in some cases pictures, family members, where those family members live, all of this. If you do a Google search on your own name, you may be shocked to find out how much data is accessible without even paying a penny. Some of this data is available before you even have to pay. And then they kind of make things worse because they also will make like these accusations almost in the way these data broker sites work, which I think they should be sued for. Maybe if this community grows enough, we'll file a lawsuit on behalf of people for this. But there's one site in particular that if you put in your name, it will say searching for court records, searching for prison sentences, searching for prior court hearings, blah, 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 like criminal records. That's the word I was looking for. Searching for criminal records. And then it will say things like criminal records found, but then you have to pay to get those. Okay, so if you did a search on me and I did this to myself, that little thing popped up. Except here's the problem. I've never been to jail. I've never been sued. I don't have a criminal record. But it made the illusion to somebody that that's possible. Of course, you had to pay to find out the rest, but that green check mark popped up on the site and was like, criminal record could be found. Like, it was worded in such a way that it made it look like it found something, but they had a little bit of an escape once they got your money. This is how shady and dark and sinister these sites are. They are absolutely the armpit of society. And the people that run them are of the most disgusting type of people. They put people's lives in danger. People who stream and other things get swatted because of these type of crap sites that basically serve to harass the public. They don't service anything worthwhile to the world. Okay. So Mozilla partners with this. Let's assume they got duped. It happens. Except Mozilla didn't just kill this relationship. They instead created a wind down of their services that they won't officially discontinue until December 17th of 2025. Now, if you remember, this was revealed back in 2024, and now they're not going to shut down the services entirely until December 17th of 2025. So if you paid for this service, you are essentially supporting a company that was also putting your data on these very sites that you were asking it to remove data from. Mozilla then finds out about this. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't immediately, but they decide they're not going to immediately kill the relationship. I don't see anything that they're suing them, as far as I can tell, or doing anything but essentially saying, hey, we're going to eventually end this relationship with them. We got duped. Oops. And that bugs me a lot. And I'm sure it bugs a lot of you as well. Now, if you've ever signed up for a company that removes your information from these armpit maggots of society that are data brokers, then what they do is they need you to verify your personal information so they can make sure they're removing your information from the site. This includes giving them information like your full name, address, emails, and other identifiable information generally. That's how they can basically determine that they're removing the right person, birthdays, that type of personal information. And data brokers aren't worried about accuracy, by the way. In their general gathering of information, let's say the data, just as an example, is 60% accurate, but they have hundreds of millions of records. That's good enough for them. However, if you're providing verified information to the data broker who is posing as the company to remove your data from the sites, then guess what happens probably when you stop paying the data broker? They now can update the information and repost it with very accurate information that you provided them through a company like Mozilla, thinking that you're actually doing something to improve your privacy. So they have more accuracy, and it's all because Mozilla didn't do its due diligence in working with a third party. Now, let's in contrast look at that with DuckDuckGo, who also sells a privacy subscription. They built theirs from the ground up, something Mozilla should have done from the very beginning. Third parties, if you haven't noticed, are always a major risk, especially when you're dealing with the privacy game. Because if you don't have very, very strict standards that you follow up on and are monitoring actively for third parties, they essentially can play on their own rules with the data. So Mozilla may be very, very responsible with your data, but the third-party companies they bring in may not be. And on that note, if we're trusting Mozilla and I'm paying for the services through Mozilla, I expect that they're doing their due diligence to make sure that this relationship is holding to the same standards that they would hold to any service that they created. And they did not terminate this relationship immediately, which to me is a major concern. On top of the fact, I think we should be hearing about all kinds of lawsuits against this CEO if all of these allegations are true. And based on the fact that Mozilla is stopping their relationship, there's got to be something there that's making them do that. So there's got to be some truth there. So everything Mozilla has been doing recently, if you take everything we've talked about, is very concerning. As my kids would say, in the privacy world, with the privacy community, they're cooked. This privacy community is as tight-knit as they come and very distrustworthy by default, as they should be. I know that when I make a recommendation on my channel, if I'm wrong just once, I could lose the entire community or a large portion of the community if I don't have a darn good reason for my oopsie. And I better not have made money off the backs of them. And if I did, before I knew better, I better be prepared to return all that money to them. Now, Mozilla did say when I was looking into their documents that you could get a refund for unused portions of the service, but I think they should give all the users all their money back. The problem is Mozilla probably doesn't have the money to give that money back. But what a disaster they've created. In my opinion, you have a higher standard that you have to hold yourself to. And it's not always fair, Mozilla, but you chose to go to be the freedom, privacy, and security browser. And that means you're held to a much higher standard than anybody else in there. And the privacy and security community is going to keep you to that standard. But in return, they're going to support the things that you put out there if you were able to keep that trust, which is something you've not been able to do. I don't even know how to end this video at this point. Like, you don't know how much it frustrates me. I want to say hurt, but that's just a weak word. But frustrates me because on one side, I want Mozilla to exist. I want them to be successful. If nothing else, then for the greatness of Thunderbird and the independence of their browser engine. Yet I would be completely disingenuous if I was to recommend Firefox to anyone at this point. Their recent ventures into AI integrations are even more sus to me. They're not doing anything there that makes me think, their partnership with ChatGPT, for example, that they're really looking for alternatives to keep you more private, and secure. Like, they just seem to be going for money grabs. They seem to be like, what is Microsoft doing? What is Google doing? We're going to do the same thing. But then kind of wrap it in some really thin wrapping paper, you know, the cheap kind you can see through if you hold up to the light, of saying, hey, yeah, there's some privacy here. This company, in my opinion, needs new leadership again and a return to its roots. They need to make money, and I'm fine with them making money. I hope they do make lots and lots of money, hand over fist, whatever the heck that even means. Being solely reliant on Google's search engine default payments, as they have been, and I believe they still are now, was not a path forward to success for them, because that even in itself doesn't make sense. You got a privacy browser that defaults to the least privacy search engine. Subscription services made tons of sense. an email domain that ended in .firefox, like, DOSgeek at firefox.com would have been cool, something I would have paid for. Another alternative to like a Proton or a Tuda. Yet the services that they offered were kind of half-baked, still half-baked. And they failed, in my opinion, to take the aggressive actions that they should have against this third party if, in fact, they didn't know this all along, which, that's up to you to decide. They should sue that company till that company's out of money. If these allegations are true, sue them for the sake of suing them till they got no money left anyways. And do the world a favor. Heck, do a GoFundMe to raise funds to sue the data brokers. And even pocket 10% of it. And I would donate to that. That's how much I hate data brokers. I can't stand them. They're disgusting to me. They're disgusting people that put other people in harm's way. They put people who are the most vulnerable in harm's way. Women, children, people who are trying desperately to restart their lives, who are constantly having to be harassed by these disgusting maggots. You could tell I wanted to say other things instead of that. But that's the best I can do on my channel. If there was no clause in Mozilla's contract for such a breach, that's another thing that's kind of like a shame on Mozilla. Like if the reason why they're continuing the services until December is because they had a contract that stated so, but you don't have anywhere in your third-party contracts with your third-party vendors that a serious breach of trust, privacy, security, obviously having ill intentions from the very beginning. These are things that I would expect from really any company, but certainly a privacy and security focused company. Mozilla, you've got to do better because we really need you to do better. You have done so much for the free web, privacy and freedom over the years. And despite all of these slaps in the face, I still can't just turn my back on Mozilla. Not yet, but dang, it's close. I beg any employee of Mozilla that sees this, and I know they listen to our podcast, Destination Linux. I don't know if they stumble across these videos, but get the leadership, beg the leadership, create a coalition, a fellowship of the ring, if you will, a fellowship of privacy to return this company back to its roots so they can build trust again. And I promise you, if you do that, the community will be there. If you build it, they will come. And even if you rebuild it, they'll come back. Because that's how much you've meant to the community up to this point, at least in my opinion. I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what browser you use. Maybe you've just given up. You're like, I use Edge, whatever. Take all my data. I hope you're not there. And if you are, keep watching these videos. Keep watching my channel so I can eventually change your opinion back. But I get it. I get the frustration because it seems like even with the companies that say they're privacy and security, they don't seem to be super trustworthy. And that creates more of a situation where people just give up. Let me know again. Thank you for all of your love and support. I hope you guys have amazing holidays, whatever you celebrate. Spend some time with family, friends. And if you don't have any of that, then spend some time on our Discord channel where there's lots of family and friends. We'll be your family and friends. I'll be your family and friend. Until next time, get out there and fill your brains.